I'm a huge fan of Clive Cussler. He created, in fact, my favorite hero in all of literature, Dirk Pitt. I am convinced that if Dirk Pitt would have been at the Alamo, we would have won. You know, I love reading about heroes. In fact, I find that my favorite books happen to be action books with a clear hero and a clear villain. I like to see the good guys win, and I love to see the bad guys taken out. I also like reading about acts of bravery that my heroes exhibit. You know, I don't think I'm alone in this love for action and adventure. In fact, I think that many people like to read and watch movies about heroes because bravery is always something worth spending some time on. Now, I find it interesting that movies and our culture seem to represent Christians or followers of God as weak and wimpy people. But yet, these people who have nothing really to fall back on, and nothing with which to make sense of their lives. And I find this fascinating because it's so far outside of the historical narrative, of the historical facts. In fact, it's almost funny it's so far outside of the historical facts. For you see, the people of God have always exhibited amazing amounts of bravery and just sheer guts over the years. In fact, the scriptures are full of stories that tell us that serving God is not easy. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's for those who are brave. It's for those who have what it takes. So next on Digging Deeper, I want to look with you at an amazing story. One that humbles me and encourages me to re-examine my walk with God. The book of Daniel records for us what it means to be a nonconformist in a conforming world. Now, I know that I'm comparing the Babylonian Empire with the world system that we do battle against every day. And remember, it was the goal of the Babylonians the conformity was the issue. They wanted to bring people into their sphere, and they wanted them to conform to their way of living. And so everyone, in order to walk away from that, you need to be a nonconformist in a conforming world because it's easier to give in. And so the account I want to look at is three young men. And it all began with an idol, just like it does even today. We find the account in Daniel chapter 3, beginning in verse 1, where it says, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth was 6 cubits. And he set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects and the governors and the counselors and the treasurers and the justices, the magistrates and all of the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And then the satraps, the prefects and the governors and the counselors and the treasurers and the justices and the magistrates and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. Therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, I want to look with you at three things concerning this image of gold. And each of these, I believe, is applicable to our struggle with the world system today. And the first is just simply the pride of Nebuchadnezzar. Somehow he felt that everybody should look at who he is. Apparently this statue, this idol was an image of Nebuchadnezzar. Now we learn from chapter 2 that in this dream that he was the head of gold. So perhaps he just decided to go one step further and make an entire idol of gold that everybody else could worship. Now remember, worship, according to the scripture, is an automatic response to something. And so he wanted all the people to have this automatic response back to his glory and back to his worth. It was all about his pride. But the other thing that I want us to see, that in the kingdom of the world, there is no room. It's all about their pride. They are the ones who are the best. They are the ones who know best. It is the kingdom of the world and the system that upholds it, the spirit of the age, that is the ultimate expression of what the serpent told Eve in Genesis chapter 3, you shall be God. You shall be God. Now, the second thing I want us to see here about this idol is there was no room for any dissent. I mean, this was not an area where you could say, I'm just not feeling it today. That some reason I don't feel like getting up. I don't want to bow down. I serve some other God. That I'm sorry. That it's a good thing, it's a beautiful idol, whatever it is, but I'm not going to bow down to it. I'm not going to worship. There was absolutely no room for dissent. If you don't do this, you will be made to care. And we're seeing this more and more in our society today, that there is no room for dissent anywhere. If you dissent in anything that the system of the world wants you to do, you're labeled. You're the enemy. Just ask the baker, Jack Smith. What is it like to say, I don't want to build, I don't want to bake a cake, a special cake for something that I don't believe in. Buy one off the shelf, no problem, but you cannot force me to do something. No, that's not the problem. Dissent is not possible. So now what we need to do, it used to be that you used to just allow what God said was disgusting and horrible and heinous, whatever. Now if you don't say that what God says is disgusting, heinous, and horrible, whatever, now you are a bigot. Now you are wrong because there's no room for dissent. And then the third thing that we see in this passage, when it comes to this golden idol, is that conformity ensures safety. And folks, that is where our world is going today. Just give in. It's all about conformity. So the world will do whatever it can to tear somebody down because they just simply want them to conform. That's why people are being arrested for praying outside of a murder mill, because they want to make it so bad that you will not actually stand up against them. That's why you have this major push against quote-unquote misinformation. Folks, misinformation in our society simply means information that doesn't line up with the narrative that has been given us from whatever governmental control we have. In fact, Hillary Clinton said it best: we need to stamp out on any kind of free speech, because if we don't, it'll be too hard to control. The issue here is conformity. That's what Babylon wanted, and that's what the kingdom of the world and the spirit of the age wants. It wants to conform us to its image. And folks, that is the battle that we're facing right now. And unfortunately, we find out in this text that most of the people who are the people of God conformed. You see, there is a godly response. We find this in verse 8, where it says, "And therefore at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. And they declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, 'O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon: Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, the pipe, the lyre, the trigon, the harp, the bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." And then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. And he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. And he ordered some of the mighty men of the army to bind Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. And then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics and their hats and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace because the king's order was urgent. The furnace overheated, and the flame of the fire killed those men who took Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael. And these 3 men, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. Yes, I refuse to use their Babylonian names. What's the response? The response is no compromise, folks. Because again, we have to remember something here. The system cannot tolerate disobedience, and that's what we're seeing in our world today. They cannot handle it. They have no problem with God, as long as it's not the God of the Bible. They have no problem with Jesus, as long as it's the Jesus of the chosen and not the Jesus of the Scriptures. No compromise, no dissent whatsoever will ever be tolerated. And so these 3 young men, they had a choice to make. What were they going to do? Were they going to stand up no matter what, face the music, or were they going to give in? Because that was the choice that everybody had to say. See, they had no guarantee that God was going to see them through. They knew that God could see them through. They didn't know if God would see them through, but they still were willing to do the right thing. And the reason for that is this, folks, is very simple. There are some things worth going to the wall for. And if ever the time the church needs to know that, now is the time. There are things worth going to the wall for. And these 3 men, young boys, said, "I will not bow my knee before this disgusting pagan god. I will serve Yahweh, come what may." And in the passage, we see something amazing. We see that God is vindicated. Verse 24 says, "And then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished, and he rose up in haste, and he declared to his counselors, 'Did we not cast 3 men bound in the fire?' And they answered and said to the king, 'True, O king.' And he answered and said, but I see 4 men unbound walking in the midst of the fire. They are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace, and he declared, Hananiah, Azariah, Mishael, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. And then Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael came out from the fire, and the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over their bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed. Their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him, and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore I make a decree. Any people, nation, or language who speaks anything against the God of Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins. For there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. And then the king promoted Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael in the province of Babylon. Now, folks, there's some things that we need to understand, because this is not a recipe for what we need to do. There are some things, there are some principles that are transferable to us. But the first thing that we need to get here is the fact that God was not obligated to save them. That if they would have gone to their death with the confidence that they knew. I mean, we see this in the New Testament. We see this in the first century, where there were literally thousands and thousands of Christians who went to their death. God was not obligated to save them, and they knew that. They said, our God is able to save us, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to do it, because the right thing is the right thing, and there are certain things that are worth taking a stand for. They understood that. But the principle that we have here is that God will use any circumstance, whatever the circumstance is, to bring him glory, because that's what it's all about. You see, and by saving Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, by saving them in the fiery furnace, what that did was it showed Nebuchadnezzar what he should have already known. We've already been through chapter 2, where he brings Daniel in there. Daniel tells him his dream and tells him, he says, Nebuchadnezzar, there is nobody that can do this. There ain't no God. There's only one God that can do that, and that is the God of the God of creation. That is the God that you refuse to serve. He's the one who can do this for you. None of your magicians or anybody else can do that, because there is no other God that human beings can manufacture, or that Baal can try to pawn himself off as. They can do anything that the Most High God can do. Nebuchadnezzar should have known this. Because, folks, it has always been Yahweh 1, the world 0. He's never lost. But the world continues to go on and on. And the problem was, when people who don't serve the Lord, or people who are supposed to be serving the Lord, when they don't take the stand, when they conform because it's easier, because they know that it may be difficult if they don't, when they do that, they're actually undercutting their own ministry. And so when the world tells the church to stop meeting and to not and to buy into whatever they have to say, whether it's in 1930s Germany or in America in 2020, when the government says you cannot meet, it could be in China, it could be in Russia, it could be anywhere on the planet, and when they say we're not going to do this so that we can show love to our neighbors, folks, at that point in time, you've just lost any kind of moral high ground that you may have had, and you've just lost whatever witness that you had. Azariah, Hananiah, and Mishael, they had an incredible witness, whether they died or not. But God was going to use this event to bring himself glory. And so the story of Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael reminds us that serving God can, at times, be dangerous. The world constantly tries to get us to compromise in order to keep our security. And folks, it takes real guts to do the right thing, no matter what. And I am afraid that as we get closer and closer to the return of the Lord, Could be in 2 weeks, it could be in 200 years. We don't know, but I can tell you this, we're getting closer. And Jesus said the closer you get, the worse it's going to become. And folks, if there's ever a time when Christians have got to say, I'm going to do the right thing no matter what, this is it. Because we don't know what the future brings. We do know the one who holds the future, however. And his understanding of success is not always the same as our understanding of success, because his goal here is not necessarily our comfort here on this planet, but it's how well we can glorify him in what he has called us to do. And that something might be persecution, it might be suffering. And the easiest thing to do to avoid all that mess is to conform. And I'm going to ask you, don't do it. Follow the example of these three incredibly brave young men. Because who knows? It might just change the world in which you live. Not the whole world, but your sphere of influence. It could matter as people look at what you're willing to give up. Because the right thing is the right thing, no matter what. So I pray that you're encouraged by this account. I'm always love the scriptures because there's such incredible stories, incredible just truth that we can learn. And I pray that you would really stop and think about, where are the areas where God is calling me to do the right thing, even when it might be a little bit uncomfortable. Pray that you have a wonderful time as you worship with your siblings in Christ this week. I look forward to seeing you again in a future video. God bless y'all.